right, we are back here again. It's Thursday, and we have Think and Link, pants optional, where we leave the decision up to you as to your choice on that option. We put on this little gathering to satisfy our curious crew here at Capsule. And for those of you who don't know who Capsule is and perhaps confuse us with the retail distributor of drugs, which has happened, we don't distribute drugs, although we actually do distribute the drug of design, and it is addicting if you get into design in a big way. We call ourselves a special project firm, and we work on a variety of challenging efforts around brand, experience design, naming, and marketing, and that is Capsule. And this week we have not only two amazing guests on the stage, but we also have, and I'm pleased to announce, we welcome back Kitty Hart into the Capsule as my co-host, as Kelly is on vacation this week and in a place where Wi-Fi is not available, unfortunately. Many of you might know her as the heart of Capsule when she was here. Now she's the heart of Dynamico, and I'll let her talk about her new gig a little bit before we get into our guests this morning, Bjorn and TV.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me back as your number two while Kelly's away. It's always great to be part of this network. Great to see all of these faces on the Zoom screen. Yeah, I joined Dynamico recently. Dynamico is a digital team, and we build inbound marketing strategies that basically convert underperforming websites, underperforming sales efforts into revenue generating assets. So it's a really exciting space to be. Everybody needs that right now. It's a great team, and I'm really excited to be back in the North Loop. Well, once we're able to be back in the office. So I will, I'll see you at the local coffee shops, Aaron.
That's great. When we can actually be out there safely and whatnot, yes. All right, I am phenomenally excited to have a breakfast conversation. We're still in the range of breakfast here at 11 o'clock. We have TD, who is an iconic marketer in Twin Cities because of where he's been recently, and then even way back to Welch's when he was back there. But he has become an iconic and very notable marketer here in town. I'll let him do his own introduction, but we've got him paired up in a marvelous way with our first Swede. Well, I should say first current generation Swede, talking oats, talking oat milk. So between Bjorn and TD, we're going to have an amazing conversation. But at first, I want to let the two of them do a little background introduction, where they came from, how they came to this moment in time. So TD, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the pleasure to be able to interact with this group. TD Dixon is my name. I'm currently at Post Cereals. It's so funny because I actually started my career at General Mills. So I started in cereal, and it looks like I'm going to end my career in cereal. And in between, I've had the opportunity to work on everything from beer to baby diapers to grape juice. So up and down the gambit, right? But really, I've had a blessed career. Had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people, do some pretty disruptive things, and just really enjoying kind of what's going on. I always find when you're in a crisis, that's when true ability of how do you change consumer behavior comes out. So excited about talking about some of those things with you guys today.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Bjorn, take it away from a car somewhere on the East Coast.
Somewhere on the East Coast, yes. Thanks, Aaron. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to a little chat. It's a nice break from isolating on an island off Cape Cod, staying away from COVID. But no, I'm here to talk a little bit about my experience from food tech and the food industry, where I've been active since 1997. I teamed up with my brother, who had made a little invention in his lab where he figured out how to make milk out of oats. He started milking oats, quite simply, and we thought that was a cool thing to do. Before that, I spent 10 years in computer security. So I always felt that the career path from computer security to oat milk is very straightforward and logical. And hopefully I'll get a chance to explain why.
That's great. Wonderful. This is going to be good. So I'm going to start off with the first question. And my first question is to Yi. So we've noticed there's a lot of people that have signed up from the Post brand. And I'm curious because they're probably wondering, why are you showing up in your first speaking event and a pants optional event, right?
Why am I not working?
What are you doing? Why are you not working? What are you doing this?
That's right.
And I didn't bribe him to do this. He was just kind enough and generous enough to do this. But from what I've heard from other people, you bring a lot of creative energy to an organization. And for their sake and for all of our sake, tell us what it's like to work with you, what it's like to be partnered with you and work alongside you in an organization.
Yeah. Well, I like to think that the thing that maybe I'm known for that makes people excited to work for me is I give people the permission to dream. I have a very simple philosophy. I call it 3D. We dream it, we develop it, we deliver it. A dream is all about setting a vision for a future. And one of the things that I like to do is, we spend a lot of time talking about how could we versus why can't we. And I think that's one of the biggest things that helps people be able to just inspire to do things differently. And in doing that, it's amazing what you see come out of people when you just give them that permission to dream. And a lot of the successes that I've been fortunate to have really haven't come from me, but have just come from the fact that I've given other people that permission, and the ideas that come from them have manifested themselves in successful innovations or campaigns or whatever the case might be. So that's really what it's about. We dream, and I think even the Post people on here, we just kind of went through this process, and I was telling them how pleased I was within, I think I've been here now about 60 some odd days, and how pleased I am in just the last 2 months, the things that we've come up with. And so you guys are going to see some really cool things coming down from Lakeville here pretty quickly. Just stay tuned.
Nice. Good stuff coming out of Lakeville. I love that. That works out really well. 3D and TD.
There you go. That's right.
Well done. Well done.
It's poetry, man. It's poetry. That's
right. Total poetry. Love it. Okay, so, and Bjorn, we also have a lot of liquid dairy people on this call. So I want to potentially to reassure them that, oat milk's not going to take over the world. Though, I'm sure it won't. Maybe it will. Who knows? I like the oats shirt. That's great. So I'd like to know, give everybody, because in setting this up, I started to chat with people because we've been aware of the oat milk movement, and I've added it to my coffee, and I've added it on cereal, and I've done this thing, and I'm started chatting with people that I think would be aware, and they said, no, I don't know what is oat milk. I didn't know it even exists. So can you give a little bit of background on the health benefits of oat milk, and the reason why we should potentially skip the cow, as you say?
I'll be happy to. It's a big topic, obviously. There's many good reasons for this, but health benefits, it's really the question of the health of the planet as much as the health of the individual. Unfortunately, the dairy industry, as we see it today, has maybe adopted some big industry practices that are not necessarily ideal for the environment, right? I think cows are never going to go away. There's always going to be an important industry for dairy farmers out there. It's just a question of today changing how we do the mega farms that with big volumes and the way we raise cattle, and I think there's a lot to be improved there. So the oat milk business, my brother's research project was really coming up with a different solutions to many different problems with dairy. For example, dairy milk protein allergies, right, which is 4% of the population. So it's marginal in that sense, but it's a big impact for the people that are affected. Lactose intolerance is another one. You could argue you could remove lactose from milk, but it's probably more effective to go straight from raw material. And I mean, oats has a lot of inherent health benefits. I'm sure you're well familiar with that up in your part of the world. I mean, the beta glucans in oats help regulate and manage the LDL cholesterol. So Oatly, in fact, is extremely potent at reducing cholesterol. So there's a number of those aspects, and I think the key thing is to combine modern lifestyle with products that are sustainable environmentally, that give you the necessary dietary fibers. The dietary fibers is the second, well, the most, how do you say that? The ingredient that we lack the most in our diet, right? And so there's a real strong reason for us to eat more dietary fiber, and drinking oat milk is a perfect way to get that important ingredient for us. It helps us digest food better, creates a better gut environment. You know, the microbiome, we feed the microbes in our intestines with the dietary fibers. So I think all this combines, but if it doesn't taste great and if it doesn't work and function in your daily life, people won't drink it. So obviously you need to combine the health benefits with great tasting product that fits the modern consumption patterns. And we can see today how people all over the world are turning from milk in their coffee to oat milk, and we're very happy to see that happen and be part of that transition.
Great. I think it was somewhat reassuring to our liquid dairy friends that it's a complement to other things, not a replacement in some scenarios, but Kitty?
Yeah. So as we were preparing for this, I was reminded of something that a speaker said. Aaron and I were at the Fuse conference many years ago, and this has stuck with me. I think about it often, but the speaker said the next innovation in your industry will actually come from another industry. And it just hits on the importance of making sure that we're always looking at what else is going on out there, and how do we infuse that into our own businesses. So would like to pose this question to both of you. Let's start with Bjorn. Oat milk is an ideal example of this phrase. Yeah. You just hit on that a little bit in describing to us why. Tell us what barriers you found entering into a traditional category like liquid dairy.
So yeah, no, it's a great comment that all true innovation disruption, actually, not just innovation, but all true disruption always comes from outside of your core industry. And indeed, my brother and I and the team we built very early on when we started developing this company and this product, we knew nothing about the food industry. And one of the early, so what you do, you go and ask the senior people in the food industry, how do you do this? And I think one of the first mistakes we ever did was that we started listening to them. Because it's very clear that when you come with something that stands a chance to completely change how the game is played, the incumbents are all of a sudden, I mean, you have huge investments, a huge knowledge base. You don't want to change that. You don't want to risk that. Therefore, coming from outside actually gives you a lot of freedom. You can start do things that the traditional, in our case, food industry people would say, oh, it doesn't work like that in the food industry. We've learned now that whenever somebody says that to us, an old stalwart, if you like, we know that that's exactly where we're going to go, because nobody of the incumbents are playing in that field or doing, using, for example, I think what Oatly has done so phenomenally well over the last couple of years, the team there, I can't take much credit for the branding and marketing that's going on right now, but people don't do that in the food industry. When we hired a new CEO, when we wanted to build a branding organization, we had to go outside the food industry to find people that really understood how to build and nurture a lifestyle brand. The food industry is caught up in sort of a distribution game and owning shelf space, and you know, and yeah, that worked in the last century and last millennium actually, but there's a new world out there now, and there's so many more ways to engage with consumers that weren't available just a few years ago. And I think for us in the beginning, we struggled very, it was a huge problem for us, the challenge to convince retailers to list the product. They didn't even know where to put it in the store, right? There was no category for this. There was like, let alone demand. And I'll remind you that we launched in Sweden that actually has a much higher per capita dairy consumption than the US, a much lower prevalence of lactose intolerance. So although the consumption and per capita here is high, it's even higher in Sweden. So it's really the wrong place to launch a plant-based dairy product, if you like. Or you could commercially say, if you can make it there, you can probably make it anywhere else, right? And so there was just convincing retail, but luckily over the last, I would say, 10 years, the game has changed completely, and now we are educating and the incumbents how to play in this game, I would say. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of different types of marketing and branding exercising also in food. That's really never happened before. I like to say about the dairy industry that they never really cared about the consumer. They tend to get upset when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look to the chat and see what happens there.
Yeah, not ill willing, right? But it's sort of because they never had to. Because, you know, it's this industry structure built on subsidies and the government was there pushing. You never really had to research the customer. And you were relatively safe from competition too, because you had your geographic monopoly. You had a dairy that serviced the closed markets, right? Mm-hmm. But that has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. And I think that's part of the reason why many of the big incumbent dairy companies are struggling so much right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So, TD, when you introduced yourself, you shared a little bit, you've got a very broad background with all the brands that you've been with, most recently coming from protein snack brand that definitely disrupted other categories. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, sure.
So we know that you're planning to have, you know, to do the lead disruption at Post as well. Is there anything that you can share with us about kind of where you go with that, or where you go to find your inspiration to bring that in to Post?
Yeah, I think couldn't agree more than what Bjorn said about most disruptions come from outside the category. And I think that if there's one, you know, advantage I might bring when I come into a new industry is the fact that because I've come from other industries, I'm not locked into this is the way you have to do things. You know, when I think about what we were able to do at Jack Link's, really the first step was we had to stop thinking about ourselves as a beef jerky company and start thinking about ourselves as a protein snacking company, which gave us a very different frame of reference to then think about, okay, well, what are all the unmet needs within protein snacking, which led us to things like breakfast and led us to refrigeration, led us to bars, all the different places that we went in to disrupt all the different categories. So we're taking the same approach at Post. You know, we're not going to be thinking about ourselves as a cereal company anymore, but what about breakfast solutions? And what within the world of breakfast can we bring to, you know, to somewhat disrupt it? And so, you know, I'll use one example just because it's out now. When you think about snacking and how snacking has become such a part of our everyday lives, right? That we don't even think about meals anymore. We think about snacking all day. And people already are snacking on cereal as kind of a common behavior. Well, how do you make that much more of a planned behavior? So those are some of the things that we're exploring and looking to bring solutions in to really think about ourselves much more as a breakfast solutions versus just a cereal company.
Yeah. I mean, really what both of you are doing with your products, you're changing the conversation around these topics and how people interact.
You got it.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he didn't actually specifically identify a category that he's going to be going into. Curious. Being revealed soon.
Can't let all my secrets out yet, man.
No. You gotta roll them out. Big.
Still gotta make money, baby. Still gotta make money.
Yes, you do. You do. Yes. I know. So back to you with my next question. You've been in the chief marketing officer role. You're now in the chief growth officer role. There's a significant amount of pressure, I would think, that goes with that title, right? And all the things you need to do. How do you deal with that pressure as far as delivering results?
Sure.
Put it back on the team. Is it all on you? What's up?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's on all of us. I think my point of view on this, and I think this goes. I'm in a few share groups, and when I talk to my peers, either at the CM or CTO level, we all kind of get into these roles because we actually like the pressure. That's actually the whole fun of it, right? The thrill of the competition. I'm a big sports guy, and I think business and sports are so synonymous with one another. Where you have clear enemies, and whether your enemy is another company or your enemy is, how you change the consumer behavior. That's the fun of it. Obviously, the results and all that kind of stuff are important, and we all have people we have to answer to, but the real fulfillment comes from the challenge. I actually much prefer being in a challenger position like I am now versus being in the lead. I've been on both sides of the coin. I like being in the challenger for a lot of the reasons Bjorn says. That it gives you the opportunity to actually take more risks and really disrupt industries that, are in need of disruption. That's really what the game is all about. So I relish it. My team and I know that obviously by the nature of my title, which is growth, that we got to grow. so there's definitely a bullseye on that. But I think, back to kind of the teams that I've had the pleasure of leading, why I think they enjoy working with me is that we're okay taking those risks, and I give them complete autonomy. And at the end of the day, I know the buck stops with me. And so, as long as we fail fast and fail cheap, that's what, makes it fun. And we'll hit a couple of, singles and doubles, and then we'll get that home run. And so as long as we keep getting to the plate, we tend to win more than we lose.
Yeah. Yeah, to continue on the sports metaphor, it sounds like you're definitely looking ahead, not, as a challenger, you'll be able to see the competitors out there on the horizon.
Absolutely.
Instead of looking over your shoulder, worried about who's going to overtake you, who's going to come into your category.
Right.
Just go into other people's categories. Yeah.
Right.
That's nice. It's a good way to look at the world. Guess it puts the pressure on change and getting the consumer to actually see things differently. Just good. And Bjorn, you've done this. It's funny how when you look at brands and you think this oat milk and this Oatly thing has just been around for a few years. If it's just new to the audience or new to you, but you've been doing this for almost 30 years. You've been working on this for a while. Yeah. When I first read into it, I thought, really, that long? You've been, pushing this really big rock up a hill, and for almost 30 years. How do you motivate yourself? How do you keep the team going? How do you keep people pushing that big boulder and getting people to see it?
I get that question a lot, and it's really not that hard. And I'm not operational in Oatly today anymore. I'm on the board now. I work more on, help, as you do on a board. We work with strategic issues and whatnot, and that's been my life the last 4 years now. But I think it's not that hard, because what we have seen, the brand Oatly we launched in 2001. So the brand is only, well, give it a take, 19 years, right? But when every year is better than the year before, it's sort of, but it's not a home run, right? We got a couple of singles, as you say. I've been learning the baseball language here, and occasionally a home run, right? But it's always going better. And the challenges are, well, let's take this country, let's break into this market, let's launch. There's always a new hurdle. There's always something that is just around the corner. It's not on the horizon wave, you know, ahead of you. So that could be kind of, you know, cause of despair at some point. You're never going to reach it. But if you have goals that are just around the corner, you keep running. Like I have my dog here. You might have seen her run around here. It's kind of like, you know, that dog mentality. Or is that there's a bigger bone, and there's another big bone, and holy moly, there's a big bone right here. I think that's been one very important part of it. The other part is that it's not every day you have to have the opportunity to be part of a company that can really truly change some, you know, important infrastructures in the world here. I mean, we are very mission driven, and Oatly, if you talk to the Oatly team today, I mean, they would describe to you a company that is number one, a sustainability company that do products in the field of oats. And that sort of mission is so big, and it's so easy to get passionate around it and about it. And you get feedback from consumers all the time that make you, you know, that go straight to your heart. And it's just amazing. And I mean, we all got a huge kick out of being used as props on Saturday Night Live back in March, right? I mean, how cool is that? The company had nothing to do with that. Right? It just happened. And you start feeling like, you know, we're starting to have an impact on culture, on lifestyle. And next thing you know, that was another 10 years.
Another 10 years passes by. If you don't mind, I'd love to move to one of the questions from our audience, because we're getting a lot of questions coming in the chat, which I think is marvelous. I'm curious, back to TD, if you're looking at different sales channels. That's part of the innovation. Not that you have to reveal too much, but you're thinking about direct to consumer. I know there's other competitors out there in your field that have struggled with that idea.
Yeah. I think you know, COVID has obviously exacerbated. E-commerce was already a growing channel, but COVID is obviously exacerbated it. And I think that consumer behavior is going to be here to stay even after we get back to normal. So that's definitely an area of opportunity, both in terms of, you know, not just direct to consumer, but also having a bigger and stronger presence on your pure plays as well as your retailer.coms. That's a big emphasis for us. And I think it's, again, back to innovation. I think it's another place for innovation as well, right? It's easy to put, you know, little boxes in a big box and ship it to a house, but how do you actually make that environment, innovate around that environment in such a way that improves the consumer experience? And so those are some of the things that we're investigating.
That's great. Good to hear. That would be cool to see more innovation direct to consumer in the categories that you're in, for sure. So one more back to Bjorn. And this question is from Zoe from Bim Bam Boo Crew. I only announced that because that is a what's the straw that broke the camel's back? Was it Saturday Night Live? Was it, I mean, because it was to the point where there were signs up at coffee shops that say, no, we do not have Oatly right now. We're trying to get it. It's kind of an interesting awareness technique. If you were putting those signs up there, I doubt it you were. It was definitely a supply challenge. But what do you think was the straw that broke the camel's back in the U.S. market? And you hit that curve.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm not sure anybody really understands the answer. It's the perfect storm. I think when we developed the first barista version and launched it in 2014 back in Europe, right? We worked with some of the leading baristas and coffee roasters in our home country. And I spoke with one of them, and he explained to me, exasperated, right? So here I am, I source the best coffee beans. I go to Colombia, I go to Africa, I go everywhere, right? I spend my life, my soul in finding the best coffee bean. And then I bring it back home, go down in my lab, and I roast it to absolute perfection. And I go and I, make the best cupping and I serve it to consumer, and they ask for almond milk with it. And I know they'll cut all the notes. It's like, why did I do this for? Why did I just spend all this time perfecting my brew and they're going to kill it with this, No. So there was a pent-up demand in high-end coffee trade there was quite simply no product that delivered, none. And we were the first that could deliver. In fact, now we see a lot of coffee shops even throw out dairy because, taste is arguably up to the, in the eyes of the beholder, so to speak. But it's the perfect marriage of the flavor notes and the tones, right? And at the end of the day, the lesson out of this is that taste is king. Then that really, in combination with the launch strategy that was going after the high-end coffee shops, we learned that. We perfected that in Europe before we took it to the US, that if you go with the trend-setting coffee shops, everybody else will follow. So we turned a lot of coffee shops down in the beginning, and of course we had to too, because there's another board meeting I never forget, where we were sitting there sternly looking in the eyes of the CEO and ask him, so okay, you're going to launch in the US next year, how much are you going to sell? Because we had to build a factory to supply him, right? So it's and we thought we were extremely bold and bullish. And I think we probably underestimated anyway, the result was that we could never meet the demand here in the US. We still can't. We're building factories, we're expanding capacity, we're all over the place. We still can't meet demand. So I think, again, having the right product, the right place, there was a pent-up demand in a very fast-growing and high-profile segment that didn't have a solution. And we came with a solution at the right time. And I think we also timed it very well with the maturity of Gen Z. They're making the purchasing decisions now, and we own them. And I think that has helped tremendously. We see now with exactly the same pattern repeat all over the world. We are in Asia, we are in Australia, South Africa, and the same patterns everywhere. So it's very cool to see.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, if you don't mind, because I watched, in preparation for this, I watched an amazing interview by the Brand Lab, which everyone should go listen to. TD did an interview with them. It was 4 tough questions, or maybe 3 tough questions. It was really well done, really quick, 5 minutes. And you just kind of go, wow, that was, telling of our times and how much hasn't changed, and how much, because you want to see the positive, but in a lot of cases there isn't. So we've all been excluded for different reasons, by country of origin, perhaps, color of our skin, where we grew up, right? Excluded from things. And TD, if you don't mind telling a bit of that story of what you shared in that, and also just what does it motivate you when people are closed-minded? When you can, and it's obvious, you can see it, you can hear it in their words, or they're as blatant as that story was. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a minority, and I think we probably have all experienced these situations when you just have blatant, whether you want to call it racism, sexism, whatever the factor that causes people to decide to look at you differently, right? And then, more importantly, make decisions on how they look at you, and whether it's in a job environment, whether it's in a social environment, whatever the case might be. And so I had one of those situations that happened to me a while ago, and then it has shaped me from the standpoint of just recognizing that's the world that we lived in. But I think the thing that I took from it, and it's a lesson that my mother actually taught me when I was a kid, when I had a similar situation happen as a kid. She's like, don't get mad, get meaningful. And, you know, that notion of being meaningful and making meaningful change is really what I use as motivation. And, you know, whether it's trying at work to be the best leader, the best mentor, the best team member I can be, or being the best husband and father at home that I can be, you know, not getting mad at those situations, but turning them into meaningful experiences and meaningful change. That's really what I focus on. And then I can go to sleep at night, look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? Everybody has their own look on life, and for whatever reason they have those opinions, but I'm going to use it as motivation to make meaningful change in people's lives. So that's just the approach that thing.
That's incredibly elegant. Yeah, I've often referred to this racism as doesn't make economic sense. I mean, it just does not.
Exactly.
Why would you do that? You know
Exactly.
it
That's
doesn't.
right.
Nothing rational about it. Anyway, that was.
I think that's the reckoning that we are as a society, you know, regardless of your political side of the spectrum. I think the reckoning that we're having as a society is just that we are a diverse society. And if you're in a for-profit business, you want to be able to sell to everybody. And so that's something that I think a lot of companies are reckoning with right now. And PCB is no different. We're dealing with the same thing. So
Yeah. It's more and more challenging as it seems like we're more divided. At least the media would tell you we're more divided than we've ever been. Don't know that we are, but yeah, anyway, that's another conversation for another one. I'm going to hand it back to Kitty for her next question.
Yeah.
She's got a really good one coming up.
So, you know, it's always fun when you get to meet larger than life personalities. And Aaron and I had a really fun opportunity to meet Martha Stewart a number of years ago. And I think it's something that we will never forget. We actually got to have a conversation with her. So you guys certainly have had opportunities as well. Bjorn, what is Oprah like in real life? And have you kept in touch with her? Oh, you're on mute.
How about I unmute?
There we go.
I wish I had an answer. I have not met her.
Oh.
She has invested through her business, through her investment arm, and we have yet to have that thing to happen.
Okay.
Well, I suppose
my wife has met her in other certain situations, and she is every bit, as I understand, the solid, down-to-earth woman you think she is, right?
Yeah.
That's good to hear. You like that? It's not a celebrity facade.
No, not at all.
That's cool.
Yeah, very good. So, TD, we're curious about Sasquatch.
Oh, man, Sasquatch, we're bros, man, you know. Hey, I'll tell you a funny story, and this is unknown, but Sasquatch is the most famous, the real Sasquatch that, you know, you see in all the commercials. He's the most famous person that nobody ever knows. So he is Jason in Friday the 13th. He is the Predator, and if you guys have seen the movies, The Predator.
Yeah.
He's the guy that plays the Predator. And then he, can't remember the name of the TV, I think it's called Grimm. He's the main bad guy in the TV show. It used to be called Grimm, I think. So anyway, yeah, so he is super famous. Like, everybody knows these characters. That's what he is. He's a character actor. So everybody knows these characters. And then obviously he's Sasquatch, and he's incredible. He's probably like 6'9", 6'10", so super tall. But the nicest, like the most soft-spoken, nicest guy you'll ever meet. But yeah, you get him in the corner and you get him, you know, in his Sasquatch mode, and he just goes crazy. So, but it takes him like 2.5 hours to get the suit on. It's a pretty elaborate suit because it has all the different mechanicals to make sure the facial expressions and all that work well.
Yeah. Wow. That's one of those little tidbits that you can share at a party.
That's right. That's my party favorite.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's good.
That is really good. So I'm curious about, and for each of you, are there brands out there that inspire you? Brands that you've seen that you've said they're really doing it right, either before this, what we're in right now, or now while we're in it, brands you've admired for what they've accomplished. TD, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking earlier. I love brands that disrupt and that, you know, are in that challenging position. I mean, Oatly obviously is one of them. Definitely have admired what they've been able to do. You know, when I think about ones that come to mind, you know, recently, like I think about Popeyes, and you think about you know, the world of a KFC and a Chick-fil-A who kind of dominate that category. You know, what Popeyes was able to do with their chicken sandwich and, you know, almost kind of turning that into a cult following was pretty amazing. I think about, you know, obviously we're all familiar with Harry's and what Harry's did to Gillette and the whole shaving community and things like that. So those are the ones for me that really I take inspiration from, because, you know, in pretty developed categories, and it's very similar to what Bjorn said earlier in terms of finding what they are not thinking about and being able to capitalize and innovate around that to drive meaningful consumer behavior change. That is always really inspirational. And I take those as lessons, and that's what I'm always challenging my teams to do is, hey, you know, yeah, we're competing in a sleepy cereal category, but what can we do to wake it up? What can we do to actually disrupt it? You know, same thing in the jerky category. It was pretty sleepy for a while, so what can we do to wake it up? So those are the brands that come to mind for me.
Nice.
Bjorn, what about you?
Yeah, so I love brands. I'm sorry, branding, and I love brands that are really more than just a pretty sticker, right? I think there's more branding in today's world is all about a mission and a mission statement. And I think one brand that's certainly been around for many years that has excelled over the years and show that it can handle time and aging is Patagonia, clearly, right? And they also show that they can take their brand into unexpected categories and quite, you know, with reasonable success at least. Start adding food, for example, and salmon fishing, and, you know, or sustainable salmon fish farming and things like that. I think that's where I look and seek encouragement, guidance, directions. There's way too many brands that just try to be cool and slip a pretty sticker on a product and think they're done with it, right? And add some high pay, you know, expensive influencers. But I think consumers really ultimately don't want brands. They don't care about brands. Who cares about brands, right? Well, why? But you care about somebody that stands for something. And I think that's an interesting other aspect too. I think companies now today will have to learn to actually take a stand. This is what I represent, and knowing that means that I might, you know, lose a few consumers on the way because they may not agree with me. But I think we're too tired of wishy-washy brands that say yes to everybody and try to please everything and everybody everywhere, right? It's not authentic. So authentic brand, mission-driven brands is the way of the future, and there are a couple out there, you know, we want to see more.
Yeah, that's great. And a plug for a client of Capsules is always welcomed. Patagonia, that was great. I love them. I've used this line, it's not mine, it's someone actually we hope to have on here. It came from Joy Howard. She said, Patagonia the brand and Patagonia the company are the same thing. And it struck me as a really fascinating, like, wow. Not many brands can say that. Not many
can say that, for sure.
Actually say that, right? Like, is this the corporate veil that we hide behind that sometimes isn't good? They don't hide behind the corporate veil at all. So we've got a great question from Karen Hunter from the audience that I think was great, that relates to that really nicely. But I'm talking about personal purpose here a lot, or about purpose of brands and purpose of business. for each of you, what do you think your purpose is, and what do you do? How does it impact you every day in your working day? TD, I don't know if you want to take that challenging one first.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'll liken it back to where I started in terms of, dream, develop, and deliver. My personal purpose is to give people permission to dream and then help them realize it. And so whether that's within our business or in their personal journey, we spend a lot of time thinking about that for the business. Equally, we spend the same amount of time with the folks that work for me. One of the things that I'm super proud of is in the last 3 places that I've been, when I decided to leave, the person that they selected to replace me was actually somebody on my team, versus having to go to the outside. And so that for me is a personal purpose when I know that I've been able to impact somebody and hopefully develop them in a way that, ultimately they can take my job, right? And that's fulfillment for me. And so, that's, it's kind of hokey, I know, but that's kind of the thing that I take pleasure and enjoy. And if we can, make some money and win along the way, that's icing on the cake. But that being able to see people realize their dreams through the direction and the development that I'm able to give them is really fulfilling.
I don't think that's hokey at all.
Cool.
I think that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree that see people that you hire and that young people grow underneath you and they're ready to shoulder the big responsibilities and ultimately take over. I think that's great. My brother and I have been in parallel with Oatly. We built a food tech lab over the last 15 years, right? And our passion, if you like, lies very much in the space of innovating foods and food products that deliver true health benefits. Go through the whole gauntlet of clinical trial testing and improving products that work. We believe firmly there is so much to do health-wise on this planet by providing food that actually addresses serious health issues like obesity, diabetes, for example, which are conditions that affect almost half the U.S. population right today. Highlighted now during COVID, for not the least, that if we don't take care of how we eat and our general health, we expose ourselves to higher risk for things like COVID. I see that there's just no end to how much you can do in that field. And just launched a new company called Good Idea, where we have a product that helps regulate blood sugar, harness your natural energy. You don't feel tired after lunch, and it actually regulates the blood sugar swings with using natural ingredients. So that's one example. We have a few other examples. We're developing a pharmaceutical company back in Sweden in our lab now that is 100% food-based. We're a little nerdy in that sense. We love science, we love food, and there's so much that's yet to be done. So many innovations to be made, and it's just very few people in that space. I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs starting new companies. I think in the food and food tech space, and I want more people in here. Together, if we do this right, we can help fix many of the environmental problems on the planet, but also some of the most pressing health issues.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is awesome. You are really, really inclusive, not being exclusive, which is wonderful to see and hear for sure. That's impressive. Okay, do you have a question for our guests?
Well, I was curious. So this is a question that has popped into chat early on, and I'm curious about your guys' thoughts on a guess for the next or a future animal-based category that will go plant-based. Any thoughts on that or ideas? These things tend to, come from you're not even thinking about it, and it's like, yes, of course we can make that plant-based. What do you think's out there?
Well, that's a great question, right? I don't necessarily. I mean, for one thing, I think in the dairy space, if you like, there is really no good cheeses, and what I mean by that are more sort of the premier kind of high-end cheeses like you expect to find on a cheese plate in France or Italy when you're there on your vacation, right? That's far out and far but you know, that's the space. On the other hand, we need those cows too to produce something, and they do an excellent job in that space. And then you have the whole seafood, of course, and the seafood side where dwindling fish stocks and everything. So that's a big area where I think at least what I've seen, I see a lot of startups. I've seen a lot of the new, early stage technologies in that space. I think they have miles, light years to go before we have really, truly good options to that. Mm-hmm. If we ever want to go that path, though, I would like to add too, I'm not 100% convinced. Might sound funny coming from me, right? My background, but as I said earlier here, right? Animals are never going to go away. They are there, and we actually need them. It's just that, unfortunately, we have allowed ourselves to be lured into an industry structure that is just wrong, completely all out wrong. Everything from how we treat the soils where we grow the feed to feed the animals, right? It's just driven out of from the wrong parameters, and I think there's tons of opportunity to change that actually, and keep those livestock going grazing on the field, on the prairie where they should be, right? Tying carbon dioxide to the soil, so increase the carbon dioxide soil content in the soil, which will cool the soil, bind moist better. Start instead of we're now in a very negative spiral. I think we can, with technology, we can change that to a positive spiral. That means, of course, with the growing population, that we can't expect to have a hamburger and a steak every day, right? But we don't, because there's so many excellent choices from the plant kingdom coming now, right? You can just give an example. We did the test launch for our food lab now with a burger in Scandinavia. So this is outside of Oatly, just to be clear of that. Which is seaweed, oats, and barley, and it's delicious. The lines are long, and we don't need any genetically modified or CRISPR anything. We don't necessarily need to go to the lab to grow meat cells. I think there's smarter, better ways.
Oh.
They fill a space too. I think they I've seen a company in Singapore that makes human milk in the lab, which I think is an incredibly exciting development, because we all know that breast milk is a problem. It's an issue. Access to good, solid replacements for the breast milk in situations where the woman can't nurse her baby, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's an area, it's space. I'll be happy to, talk for hours about whoever dares listen. But
yeah, it's innovation that certainly happens fast. I think I remember when we saw Beyond Meat for the first time at Natural Products Expo, and it was a tiny little booth, and the creators were right there, and they were talking about it, and we're like,
yeah, right.
And then every year at Natural Products, their booth got bigger and bigger, and now I see it on menus. And so that it happens in such a short period of time. And so all of this innovation reminds me that I think it was Steve Jobs that said, give people what they don't know they need yet, or they don't know what they want yet. And that was, so much at the center of his innovation. And that's definitely what we see with things like Uber and Oatly and, and
yeah. our CEO at Oatly, Tony, he when he was a young kid, he grew up running a restaurant in his hometown in Sweden, and I will never forget. He told us how he learned at the age of 19, 20, 21 to stay close to the customers, right, and never ask them what they want, never ever, but make sure if hone in a little conversation and make sure you surprise them every day. Every day you surprise them with something new.
Yeah.
And that they didn't know they wanted, and they realize, whoa, where did this come from? Right?
Yeah.
I want more of that.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back to the Henry Ford quote, that if I would have actually given them what they wanted, they would have given them faster horses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
A great one.
But yeah, you got to kind of get underneath what is it that they're really asking for.
And still, all we big food companies pay tons and tons of money for market research, right?
Yeah.
Like where we go, it's, you know.
So true.
Yeah,
So
well,
true.
and and Capsule talks about this all the time. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and it's not necessarily listening to what people say to you, but it's watching what they do.
Exactly.
Watching
Exactly
their
right.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
Jane Goodall did not interview the gorillas.
Yeah, that's right.
Not that we're all gorillas, but she observed them.
That's great.
In behavior, there is truth.
That's right.
This is great. I have one more question for each of you, and it's around what book would you recommend for this audience? What have you read recently that you'd pass on? You'd say this audience should read, and don't say our book unless you want to.
No more shameless plugs, right?
No, just Physics of Brand, Natalie. No. Any books in particular, TD, that you would recommend?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a recent one, but it has become foundation to me, which is Maxwell's 5 Levels of Leadership. As you ascend in organizations, as you have bigger teams, I think really honing in on what kind of leader you're going to be, and the simplicity, but the power in how you can go from position leadership to pinnacle leadership, which is what we all aspire to be. I think it's a must-have on anybody, regardless of what category or industry that you're in. I think it's a must-have.
So I'm reading Isaacson's book about Leonardo da Vinci, and it's so funny. It just struck me when you did a comment just before here about don't interview the gorillas, right? Talk about an alchemist and a big brain guy that learned everything by observing nature and then copying and then learning from that. But there's so many interesting aspects of reading about a big person that like him that is directly translatable to leadership and sales and marketing, in fact. And so highly recommend. It's a big book, big read, but it's a great book. That's
great. Those are two wonderful concluding conversations or concluding pieces to this that I'm sure people will take note of. We've arrived at the end of our conversation. I want to put in a plug we have an incredible lineup coming up, including another Swede in an electric motorcycle brand known as Kick. Yes. I know we're going to go all Swedes all the time. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if there are enough.
It's the innovation hub.
We also have on the list the CMO from the New York Times coming up, which is going to be an amazing one. So I highly recommend, if you want to be invited to these in the future, and Thomas will put up the link on this to go to contact Capsule and make sure you get yourself on the list. If you're not sure if you are, it's just capsule.us and find the piece from there to go make sure you're available and see these next upcoming ones. They're going to be amazing. We've got, I think, 6 lined up for the next 6 weeks. They're trying to do them all at once. They'll be wonderful. And That's all I have. I want to make sure that we thank our wonderful guest, TD. You have been inspired. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Bjorn. Having met you at a booth at Expo and just briefly had a conversation, I love that we got to do this together. This has been great. Thank you both, and thank you all for the questions and the conversation. It's been absolutely amazing. I look forward to seeing you at the next Think and Link Pants Optional, of course, where you have your choice of what you show up in. Up to you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, yes.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.